Act 2. The Ghost of the Ghoul Stars. Chapter 8. Emergence. The ulterior motive emerged from a minor webway portal, one of the thousands of small, forgotten gates the Dark Eldar had seeded throughout the galaxy. Xayah had navigated using the ship's pre-programmed routes, residual data from its previous voyages. The ship knew the paths. They simply had to follow. It tore into real space with a scream of tortured physics. Riddick's first glimpse of the ghoul stars was appropriate. Dead systems, their planets scoured lifeless. Derelict ships, centuries old, drifting in graveyard orbits. Radiation storms that painted the void in colors that hurt to perceive. It was lawless, dangerous, and far from anything resembling Imperial authority. Perfect. Scanning local traffic, Zia reported, manipulating controls with disturbing familiarity. The homunculus had adapted to his role as ship's surgeon and secondary pilot with enthusiasm. I'm detecting Orc signatures. 5 vessels. Crude but numerous. Weapons status? The motive's dark light weapons are functional, splinter cannons operational. However, our power reserves are depleted from the webway transit. A sustained engagement would be inadvisable. Riddick studied the tactical display. 5 Orc ships, ramshackle scrap heaps held together by force of will and bad welding, against a Dark Eldar frigate, normally no contest, but depleted, outnumbered, in unfamiliar space. Pull back, he ordered. Find somewhere to hide. We need supplies, information. Can't get either if we're dead. They found an asteroid field, dense enough to mask their signature. While the ship's systems recharged via captured solar radiation, a slow process, Riddick took stock. He had a ship he barely understood, a crew of one homicidal fleshcrafter, no allies, no resources, and no clear understanding of this galaxy's power structures. He'd been in worse situations. Barely. Tell me about this place, he said to Zaya. This Imperium, these orcs, everything. The homunculus settled in, clearly delighted to have an audience. Where to begin? The Imperium of Man, your species' laughably inefficient empire, spans 1,000,000 worlds. They worship a corpse god called the Emperor, who may or may not still be conscious after 10,000 years on a life support throne. Their technology is ritual and superstition. Their administration is Byzantine, and they are deliciously paranoid about anyone different. Different how? Mutants, psychers, those with warp-touched minds, xenos, any non-human species, heretics who worship the chaos gods. Don't ask. That's a lecture unto itself. They will kill you for having the wrong thought, the wrong prayer, the wrong number of fingers. Sounds familiar, Riddick muttered. And the orcs? Violent fungal warrior beasts who live only for combat. They're everywhere. They reproduce through spores, and they're functionally unkillable on a species level. But individually, they're stupid, predictable, and their entire society is based on might makes right. Riddick absorbed this. So the Imperium is paranoid and bureaucratic. The orcs are everywhere and dumb. What else? Over the next days, as the ulterior motive recharged, Zia painted a picture of galactic horror. The Toe and their naive expansionism, the Necrons and their undying hate, the Tyranids and their all-consuming hunger, chaos and its reality-breaking corruption. And everywhere, the same themes: arrogance, dogma, predictable patterns, exploitable patterns. Chapter 9. The Orc Gambit. The Orc space hulk, the Iron Crusher, was exactly what it sounded like. Dozens of ships welded together into one massive, barely functional monstrosity. It drifted through the ghoul stars like a plague, its war boss, Gitsnacker, ruling through the simple expedient of being the biggest and meanest greenskin aboard. Riddick watched it from a distance, analyzing. "You're planning something insane," Zaya observed. "Always. The orcs will kill you. They're not sophisticated like the Cabal. They don't take prisoners for ransom. They take prisoners for eating or fighting. Which means they're predictable." Riddick pointed at the tactical display. "That hulk's held together by scrap and ambition. Power structures simple. Biggest is boss. If I can trigger an internal war, the whole thing comes apart. And how do you trigger this war? By getting captured?" You made a sound that might have been laughter. "The contained predator doctrine. Of course. How delightfully suicidal." The plan was simple. Make himself visible, let a raiding party capture him, get inside, cause chaos. Simple, not safe. The ulterior motive decloaked near a salvage field. The orcs were strip mining. Riddick took a small shuttle, barely more than an escape pod, and made himself obvious. Too obvious to ignore, not obvious enough to be a trap. The orcs took the bait like fish to chum. Chapter 10. Dar Pits. Warboss Gitsnacker's fighting pits smelled of blood, engine oil, and something Riddick was fairly sure was orc sweat. The crowd of greenskins roared as a captured guardsman was literally torn in half by a particularly enthusiastic knob. Riddick, chained to a wall with enough other prizes, assessed the situation. Orcs weren't like the Dark Eldar. No subtlety, no politics beyond, "I'm bigger, so I'm boss." But that simplicity had its own logic. The knobs, the largest orcs below the warboss, constantly jockeyed for position. One in particular, a scarred monster called Gutbasha, seemed especially ambitious. When they threw Riddick into the pit, the crowd's roar hit like physical force. His opponent was a mega-armored knob, 10 feet of metal and muscle, wielding a power claw that could shear through tank armor. Riddick studied it for 3 seconds. Heavy armor meant slow. Power claw meant overconfident. Orcs loved a good scrap, which meant they'd let it play out. He waited until the knob charged, then went low and fast. The power claw sparked off stone where Riddick's head had been. He grabbed a discarded length of chain, wrapped it around the knob's ankle, and pulled, using the creature's own momentum to flip it. Before it could rise, Riddick had its own power claw reversed, punching through the neck seal of its armor. The crowd went insane. Over the next week, Riddick fought, and observed, and planned. He identified Gutbasha's crew, ambitious, hungry, but lacking the guts to challenge the warboss directly. During his recreation time in the pits, Riddick made contact with Gutbasha's chief mech boy. "Your boss wants to be warboss," Riddick said in broken Orcish. The mech boy's eyes narrowed. "Maybe. What's it to you, Hume?" Riddick held up a piece of Dark Eldar technology he'd pocketed from the ulterior motive. A power cell, still charged. "I can get your boss the biggest guns. Make him strong enough to win." "Where you get that?" "I got a ship. Hidden, you help me escape. I help you make Gutbasha into warboss." Greed and ambition warred in the mech boy's expression. "Finally, you're on, Hume. But if you cross me, I'll make you into a servitor." Don't even know what that is, but sure.